Right, here we go. All right, welcome to the latest episode of the Right Brain Warm-Up. This episode, we're going to talk to another three amazing creative people as we do each week. And this one, we're talking to some people who have done some amazing things in acting, in film, and also in being in books. So we've got three guests today. Up in the top there, we've got Adam White. Hello, Adam.
Hello.
Down below, we've got Nadine Garner. Hello, Nadine.
Hi, everyone.
And then we have Benjamin Stevenson over there to the right.
Hi, everyone.
So I might just read out a little spiel about each so everyone who's watching will know who each person is. So Benjamin Stevenson is an award-winning stand-up comedian and author. His first novel, Greenlight, was shortlisted for the Ned Kelly Award for Best Crime Fiction and published in the USA and UK. His latest book, Either Side of Midnight, is out now. So thanks for joining us, Benjamin.
No worries. Thanks for having me on.
And Nadine is one of us. Was his little sound there? Okay. Nadine is one of Australia's most respected actors. Her career has spanned film, television, and theatre for more than 25 years. On film, she's won an AFI Award and a Film Critics Circle of Australia Award. And on stage, she's won a Helpmann Award, and she's been in a million things that we all know and love. So thanks for joining us, Nadine.
Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. And Adam White up there is an independent film producer with his production company, Future Pictures, whose debut feature film Lone Wolf is starring Hugo Weaving and Tilda Cobham Hunter, and it's based on Tilda Cobham Harvey. Oh, I struggle with.
Thank you. Sorry.
Names. That's all right. It's based on Joseph Conrad's The Secret Agent, is due for release whenever the hell this pandemic finishes. So
yes, who knows when that will be?
Indeed, we never know. So we might just start with the first question, which I've been asking of everyone on this whole shebang-a-bang, and that is, I might start with you, Benjamin. What is creativity to you?
To me, it's just the process of gold panning the rest of it. I think everyone's able to put something out there, and I think that the real creativity comes from finding the good bits of everything that you produce and then uniting it into a whole. So for stand-up, that would be a 60-minute show, and for a book, it's an 80 to 100,000 word novel. But what you're doing is the real creative process is the panning. Everyone can start, but it's filtering it down and refining your ideas by putting that effort and that time in to know what you want it to be about, and that's where the creative spark really hits.
And did you find it different between stand-up and writing? Is it a different process, or is it a similar thing?
It's a very different process, because stand-up, you develop it live and your creativity comes in the moment from the people that you're talking to. So you're talking on stage to people, you throw a joke out. If it doesn't work, you know immediately. Mm-hmm. Whereas writing a novel is you're working with yourself. So your own brain is your audience. And your brain is a bit more generous than a pub in Perth who are half cut on a few pints. So it's almost more exposing to do the novel, because you do it all yourself until one person looks at it and says, these bits don't work. Whereas stand up, your hubris is so low, you know, immediately you just go, that didn't work, cut it. I'm never saying that again, cut it.
The original way of crowdsourcing, isn't it? You can tell if something works and you go, well, I'm going to use that.
Yeah, it is. And sometimes, you know, you'll see that when comedians dig around in the audience and they say, what do you do? What do you do for a living? And sometimes the audience goes for it and gives them lots of material. And sometimes they go, no, we paid for this. You write the jokes.
Yeah, fair enough. And Nadine, you obviously perform in all sorts of different ways. What is creativity to you in all the different ways that you're creative?
Yeah, for me, I think creativity is twofold. I think there needs to be an element of constraint and discipline in the creative process, and then almost like a structure or some infrastructure around you in order for you to be able to then really cash in on being able to fly in the moment and be impulsive. So for me, it's a double-edged sword. I sometimes feel in the process of building a role in a play, for instance, that it can be quite claustrophobic. You know, there's the constraints of the designer, and there's the constraints of the text, and then the needs of the director. And so you, as an actor, you bang around inside the walls of that for a bit, and then you actually make peace with that and realize that that is in fact your friend. Like, understanding where the boundaries are then enables you. It can, for me, well, I've taught myself to enable that to trigger the magic stuff that you have to find impulsively on top of that. So if you know that all those elements are taken care of, then on the floor in the moment when you're actually working a text and putting a show together, you can create in that moment, knowing that all those other elements are taken care of. And I think that film work and television work is the same. You have teams of enormously talented and skilled people who build a world for you, and you step into that, which allows you to not worry about any of that and just to actually create something in that moment that's living and real and actually translates into meaning for other people. So for me, it's quite a complex process, and it's not. It is something that requires the input of many people in order for me to be able to become single-minded about what my objective is.
Yeah, because you've written screenplays as well and been nominated for those. Like, how do you find that? Again, is it a solo thing? I know you're talking about going to a team afterwards, but how did you find that, like comparing like with what Benjamin was saying with writing his stand-up versus writing his books? Is it a solo thing and then you change it when you get to with people?
I haven't done an enormous amount of writing. I've written a short film that got some acknowledgement, and I've written plays. For me, that is a personal process, and it's something that I find very difficult to come back to as a parent and as a mother. Like I think writing needs to be something that you do with a lot of isolation and a lot of reflective time. I mean, the writers there will probably have more to say on that. But for me, it's a very personal journey, and it requires a lot of deep reflection and time to stare at walls. And I find that in the last sort of decade of my life, I have been deprived of that. So
I know that feeling.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. And many of us do. And many of us have to find our creative journey through a collaborative process because our lifestyle doesn't afford us that deep reflective time that writing often does require.
To observe things as well, isn't it? Sometimes it's hard to observe things when someone's yelling in your ear.
Processing time for artists is really important. And I think because of the necessity of our, needing to keep generating income and making money, we don't often afford ourselves, or we can't afford literally economically to take that time out to actually process how we're responding to the world. And that's what I miss the most about being a creative person, is that I'm on the wheel, constantly trying to generate an income, knowing that I'm sort of running at a deficit creatively. And in a bizarre way, being sort of on pause in this time as an artist, although there's so much uncertainty and, emotional and economic uncertainty, I'm actually relishing moments of stillness in a way I haven't done since my 20s.
Appreciating some little things that you've taken for granted, perhaps.
Yeah, and time to reflect, time to genuinely still.
Yeah, great. Adam White, so you're producing your first feature film. How is creativity to you? Because you've had a very varied life and career, it's fair to say, from being an AFL footballer to becoming a creative person. How's that journey been for you?
I think, it's an interesting one because I think even when I was playing sport, sport was kind of a distraction to the creativity in a way. So I liked playing sport, but I was always distracted by other ideas and things like that. And I think creativity is about an idea initially, and in filmmaking, you start off with an idea to tell a story, but then, like Nadine said, it's a real emotional journey to actually craft that and go through it. And as part of that, I don't think you should ever reject ideas. You should be always embracing an idea that might go and lead you off on a different garden path for your story, but it might be wrong initially, but it'll get you back to where you need to be as well. So it's good to explore every avenue and not be restrictive with no, that doesn't work for us. But just explore it a little bit, see what happens, and then come back to the main story idea.
I think I've sort of read a lot about how kids are so super creative, and then they get less creative as they get older because they are told, no, that's the wrong way to do things. And that's obviously the great thing about creativity is it can be yes to anything. You never know, do you?
Yeah, well, that's it. And when you're making a film, it starts off with usually a singular writer. Sometimes there's a collaboration going on as well. But that one person has an idea, and their idea is that singular vision of this is what the story is going to be. But then once you start employing more people, they bring creative ideas to the process as well. And it's important to listen and take on board their ideas before you say no, because there could be some bit of gold in there that can really elevate the process and make it really inspiring to be part of.
Awesome. So, and also, I might just ask, I start with Nadine, what got you into pursuing a creative career? So it's a very big thing from being a kid who's creative to deciding I'm going to do that all the time. What was it for you?
I think ultimately, like a lot of us, we have to sort of hone our careers along the lines of what's economically viable. And for me, I am a rare person in that I started very young and I continued doing what I did as a child, really. I mean, as an adolescent, I fell into it. And then the industry just kept reaffirming for me that I was doing the right thing. Inside that, I had many, many years and moments of wondering whether I needed to do other things, because there was so much, poverty, unemployment, so many trials and tribulations staying on the path. But whenever I was going to give up, the phone would ring and I'd get a job. And it was like, I was kind of being told to stay. I was kind of being tested. My faith was being tested all the time. And then I sort of gave in and went, well, this is actually probably going to be how my life is. And it's going to be a bit rock and roll. And I'm not going to have certainty and I'm not going to have financial security, but it's kind of become a calling, and it's become almost a civic duty. I feel that if we're all allotted roles in this lifetime, then I'm one of the storytellers, and I have to basically just put up with whatever that entails. And as I get older and I continue to grow and my brain expands, then that encompasses a lot of other things too now, in terms of a bit of social commentary and radio. And I find that, as a creative person, what we're allowed to do, unlike most, workers, that we're actually allowed to keep evolving, and the arts allows you to keep morphing. And, okay, so you're going to write, and now you're going to be a bit funny, and now you're going to be a dramatist or whatever. So we can actually call the shots in that respect. We don't have to have it all on a CV and then wait for an employer to tell us that we're valid. We can actually design our journey, if you like. It may not be fiscally particularly rewarding, but it certainly is something that's in our hands to design for ourselves. And that's a rare thing, I think. And I don't think many working people experience that.
Yeah, I think like as creative people, you get to do so many different things. Hey, like you're not just an accountant you do accountancy all the time. You do screenplays, you do film, you do books, comedy, all sorts of things. And that's a pretty rare gift, isn't it? To be able to be a bit more free with your thinking, I guess.
I think if you've accepted that you're not going to be economically secure, then you're free to do anything. And because as creative people, we live on the fringe of society anyway, we're not frightened to take risk. We're not risk averse because we're not a slave to the dollar. We've made a decision. We've made a pact that it's never going to be particularly comfortable. And so once you make that decision in your life, the sky's the limit, really. And that's not something you can teach people to do or lead a person to do. That's either innately in them or it's not. And it doesn't mean you're better or worse. It just means some of us have much more risk aversion than others, and others have this ability to live in that really grey zone of we don't know what's going to happen next, which is why artists are kind of thriving in this uncertain time, because we already have the skills. We actually have the toolkit to manage the uncertainty, because it's kind of how we live all the time.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? If you're uncomfortable, what do you have to do? You have to keep moving. You have to keep adjusting, don't you? If you're comfortable, you just stay in the same spot. So, Benjamin, is it a similar thing for you? That uncomfortableness is what gets you going?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Nadine, but my experience of it was slightly different because I went to university and did engineering and then got bored of that quickly. I also had done English and was keen to do writing, but I grew up in Canberra and there wasn't really much of a publishing scene down there, either behind the scenes or from what I could see for the authors. So then I started doing stand-up dedicatedly after I left engineering, and I did that on its own for about 5 years. And what I found is that being on the line, being uncomfortable like that, it made me start to resent the sum of the creative output that I was putting out. So if you go to a festival and it doesn't go that well, or you get a bad review, or even just the local gig down the road, suddenly you feel like your whole world turns on that $150 because, you know, you're looking for it for your rent, and it makes you start to treat the output differently. So the way I dealt with that was I started producing things on the back end as well. So I would perform, but then I would produce other people's tours. So I was doing kind of both sides of the coin. And that's the same way that I moved into book publishing and publishing my own novels is I decided that I did want to pursue that I'd left behind. And so I went back into publishing on the back end, and then also kept writing, and then came out on the front end. So I personally found that the creative freedom that is enabled by a whole bunch of time on your hands can sometimes work against you mentally because of how important everything feels. And it's a lot nicer a moment to think that this is the thing that I have made and that I am putting out, and I hope people like it, then if nobody likes this, I'm screwed. You know what I mean? So I just found mentally I just needed a bit more to balance that out to make me a better creator as well with what I was putting out.
It is being on that edge, though. It made you have to do different things, which I guess is good in a way, isn't it? It's forced you to think of new ways of coming up with solutions to find the rent money in creative ways, I guess.
Yeah, certainly. And you diversify yourself, and it makes you, you know, it comes down to a simple thing is when you're sitting in a room writing a book, which is quite interesting about this isolation thing is I'm trying to put together my next project at the moment. And I do have a lot more time, but I have a lot less day-to-day experiences. So I'm seeing a lot less of the world. So even going out to dinner with my partner and having a conversation with a waiter, where the waiter says something to you and you think, oh, you know, I wonder what their life's like. I wonder what I can draw out of this slightly humorous interaction that I've had. You're missing all of that. So everything comes from here. So yeah, I find that the more that you're out in the world, the better the things you're able to draw on to make it more real or more humane or whatever you're trying to bring to the project.
If you keep having the same inputs, you're going to keep having the same outputs, aren't you? So the more different things you're experiencing, the more experiences you can put into your work. Adam, how are you finding the pandemic affecting your creativity in lockdown? You're trying to finish your film. How's it affecting you being kind of stuck?
Yeah, it's a bit of a strange one because we are in that process of finishing the film, and you want to move on to the next project as quickly as possible, but you got to keep your eye on what this is because it's part of the process. But there is a plan in place to start developing new ideas, and you know, I sit with my iPad most nights, even when the TV's on, and I'm just jotting down a note. I see something that intrigues me that might allow me to daydream about something else. And that's the thing I really like about the writing process is actually just the daydreaming part of it. And just thinking about things in a really weird and obtuse way that you wouldn't think about them normally, because that then spawns other ideas that can be, you know, harnessed and actually a broader audience can actually understand them. But it's nice to daydream and just wander off and, you know, go into nightmares even, and see what they offer you as well. Explore those darker places, but also explore the weird and the wonderful places at the same time. So I think the pandemic, you know, it's not ideal to be trapped inside, but I'm actually a quite isolated person anyway. And it enables me to actually do the daydreaming that I want to do.
I found a lot of creative people I've been talking to have said they're pretty shocking procrastinators. And that's probably part of it is that whole daydreaming, because you need that time to just, like you've all kind of said, you need that time to just sort of think and just be, and just let the brain go into different places. Is that fair to say, Nadine, that that's a good part of your personality? It's also just sort of that daydream, like you said that. Is that procrastination a thing for you?
Yeah, I do procrastinate, but I reckon I'm much mentally healthier when I'm having lots of downtime and lots of time to process. I'm an introvert, you know, and yet most actors are actually introverts, and they're mistaken as being people who constantly need attention and to be socializing. That's not true at all. I can't do what I do on any level without becoming an incredibly anxious and dysfunctional person unless I have loads and loads of downtime. And I'm actually probably one of the happiest I've ever been in my life at the moment, because I'm living in real time. So I'm not getting up, I'm not trying to rush to a rehearsal, having dropped my kids off. I'm actually sensing my own rhythm for the first time in a long, long time. And I know it's not going to last, but it feels like it's money in the bank for me creatively, but also in terms of my nervous system, because, you know, as an actor, when you're performing 8 shows a week, your adrenals are shot, you're kind of exhausted.
Yeah.
And just sort of go, I don't actually have to do it. I don't actually have to put myself on the line. I don't have to put my nervous system through that. I can actually retreat to a really safe place and just sense my own authenticity again. And I feel guilty about saying this, but it's actually been an incredibly important and valuable time for me so far, the lockdown.
I wonder how we're all going to be thinking about 3 months, because I'm feeling that as well. Like, it's so different not having to stress getting the kids out, get them to bed at the right time. Just everyone just at your own pace. It's all kind of a good thing. Have you guys got any inspirational like techniques that you use to sort of get you to be creative? I might start with you, Adam, up there.
What do I start with? Like I said before, I think it just starts with an idea. So an idea can come at any time from anything. And the important thing for me is sometimes to write it down, just to write that little note down on a piece of paper on my iPad or something like that, email myself what that idea might be. And if I come to it the next day after checking my email or what I've written down, and I can see that there is a semblance of something that can be progressed further, then I start jotting down more ideas. In terms of writing process, I am a procrastinator with that as well, but I also know that, you know, I might start my day, I'll be up at 7:30 and just sitting there just Googling shit. But I won't start actually writing until midday, 1 o'clock. But when that happens, I'll get 5 pages out, no matter what. That's my process.
Mm-hmm.
So I give myself time to daydream in the morning and to think about it, but knowing that by 5 p.m. that afternoon, I'll have 5 pages done. And I've found that along the way, that's my process, and it's taken some time to get to that. Everyone has a different process. There's no wrong or no right when you're being creative. You just need to find what works for you.
Yeah, it's just getting on, but doing it is most of the task, isn't it?
Yeah. And sometimes you'll fly through it, and other days it just takes a long time to run up to the event, really. But just have fun with it, really. Don't put as much pressure on it, because the next day you'll reread it and you go, oh, well, that was terrible anyway. So, but it's okay. It's
got to get it out.
Nothing wrong with that. You've got to get it out. You've got to try things and explore. It's about exploring and being adventurous, really.
Benjamin, you're doing a lot of nodding down there. Is that a similar process for you when you're writing?
Yeah, well, I think the pressure to get things out there just to get it done or to hit that page count or word count, I think can tend to scuttle sometimes when you're moving forward, when you go backwards the next day. And so I try to actually always go backwards. So because I write crime novels, a lot of people will plot as they go or even write out the whole plot, but then they'll keep moving through the novel. But if I change one element, then I will go back and change the entire thing to make sure that it is as perfect as I see it in the first draft, up to the very final word of where I'm up to in writing. So that's if I add a clue, I'm not the type of person that leaves a note and then goes, this envelope is important later. I move it all through the manuscript. So I'm always working backwards. But my process is, and you guys are probably going to hate this, but my process is very deadline based. So it's 100%. I look at my deadline and I think, cool, I've got 200 days to write 100,000 words. I need 500 words a day. And then I put it off until that number of words becomes almost impossible, and then I start. So if it gets to 1250 a day, and then I'm like, right, I got 87 days left. I need 1250 a day. I must start today. And it's the same with the shows, because you're walking out on stage on Thursday, the 2nd of February. It doesn't matter if you have a show or not. The flights are booked, the hotels are booked, the audience has bought the tickets. You are walking out on that stage. So that's the way that I kind of see it. But I do, and I don't devalue that time that I procrastinate, that I put it off, because that's the time in which you're thinking about your synopsis as a whole, your idea for the book, and you're letting those ideas, I'm writing things down, but I'm not writing chapter 1. You're letting it percolate and create its own hole in its head, so that by the time that you do start sitting down, those 1,200 words a day or whatever, my actual goal is less. If my publisher's listening, I'm not trying to cram it out that quickly, but your actual content is easier because you've worked it all through in your mind. Writing is going to the pub for a beer with a friend. Writing is going to the beach. You know, there are things that just let you sit on something that you're thinking about. But yeah, no, very deadline driven. I always like having that in the pipeline, something to work towards.
Oh, I don't hate that process at all, because it reassures me, because that's me. I'm like, get the brief, panic, don't know what to do, and then a few days to go because I'm advertising ideas. It's always like,
it sounds perfect.
Do it all. Just do it, just because you got the pressure's on. You got to deliver something, or else people are going to think finally going to find you out. That's what I find.
Yeah, I'll be busted as the fraud I am. Exactly. You know, that's the entire process for anyone. It's just papering over our
pretending we know what we're doing. Nadine, are you name? Oh, sorry, Adam, you've got something up there.
Oh no, I was just going to say, but that just reinforces that again. Everyone has a different process, and whatever works for you, it's fantastic, you know, and that clearly works for you. So it's I just think that's amazing.
Nadine?
Yeah, I think it kind of harks back to my notion of, you know, you need constraints. I think we're all kind of a bit sadomasochistic. We like the pressure, but we like to know where the back of the studio wall is, so that, you know, we're going to run into it at some point. And we kind of like to know where those boundaries are. It pushes us and propels us forward. So yeah, I totally get that.
Brilliant. So we're going about half an hour. I might go to the little question from the Right Brain Workout now, which hopefully you had and have got an answer for. So this is question 19 from the book, which is the Right Brain Workout here. This is by Angus Loxton. And the question was, if you were a professional wrestler, what would be your ring name and what would be your gimmick? And describe the finishing move that you would use to win the world title. So I didn't realize when I put it together that I've already asked this question to other people. So I've doubled up already, because there you go. I was at a deadline and I panicked and I probably didn't do the job properly, but we'll get there. Your answers will be amazing. So we might start with Adam. You go first.
Why do I have to go first on this one?
No. Because you're Mr. White. You're like from Reservoir Dogs.
It's funny. It was a funny question when this came up, because when I was in high school, early high school, like year 7 and 8, myself and my friends were obsessed with wrestling, and so we actually had wrestling names. And even though I hadn't gone through puberty yet, mine was the Bearded Dragon. So I'm going to go with that for today. Do you want the other parts of that? The gimmick is that I have dragon's breath. That can actually sedate my opponent.
Yep.
And my finishing move would be the dragon attack, a dragon attack, which is always prompted by the Queen song "Dragon Attack." Oh. So whenever you hear that come on, that's when I'm going to perform the dragon attack.
Love it. You got the music all figured out too. Nadine, what's your professional wrestling name and finishing moves?
Yeah, look, I thought about all kinds of stuff, and I got caught up in capes and lycra and stuff. So I went a little bit futuristic, and I came up with a cyborg called CG-H174 or something, and the stage name is Billy Borg. Oh. And the creature is part, you know, it has got bionic parts, and the finishing move is that there's a hidden proboscis inside the robotic encoded with an unmapped and incurable virus that that my sign-book threatens to jam up into the nasal cavity of the opponent unless they immediately supplicate themselves on the floor and admit ultimate defeat.
Perfect. 1, 2, 3, you're out. Benjamin, what's yours?
Well, my one, I may have misinterpreted the question here because I've applied it to my personal, the topics of conversation of the thing. Also, I don't watch a lot of wrestling, so I'm drawing this all on basically one move that I've seen. So my wrestler is called First Draft, and he's so shit at the start of a match, and then he progressively gets better as the match goes on. And his finishing move is also called First Draft, and it's like where they whack the chair over people, but instead he's hitting someone with a 250,000 word manuscript, and it just knocks them out.
That is brilliant. I love it. That is so great. That's awesome. All right, well, we might wrap it up there. Have you got one more thing that you'd like to talk about that you think everyone should as a take out of about creativity at the moment in the world? Nadine, what would you say?
I'd say, and I've talked about this before at schools and stuff when people have asked me to speak to students about, how to launch their careers in the arts. And I always just go back to the fact that not everyone has to be in the arts to live a creative life. That creativity comes in the most simple and beautiful actions that you make, in your kitchen or in the way you interact with your garden or even with the way you interact with people. It's really about mindful living, and that creativity isn't something you have to rush into the arts sector to find, or don't have to be an artist to live creatively and artistically. It's just actually about readjusting your point of focus.
I think that's brilliant. I think that's been really good. A lot of people do think creativity is just the arts, but it can be in literally every facet of your life. Adam?
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Everyone's an artist, whether they believe that or not, and everyone can daydream and imagine things. And so I think during tough times, that's where we need to put more emphasis on our lives and make sure that we're not, be concerned about what's coming ahead, but also give yourself time to relax and meditate. Whether you have any kind of formal meditation that you want to do, it doesn't matter. But just chilling out and just relaxing and enjoying the time that you have can also be valuable on a creative level.
Awesome. And Benjamin?
I just think in this moment, in this COVID world of self-isolating, I think there's a lot of aphorisms and kind of feel-good posts floating around Instagram and social media, things like pressure creates diamonds and all these kind of things. And I think that for me, the creativity during this time, I have to keep reminding myself not to put too much pressure on myself under those constrictions. People might feel like they need to walk out of the end of this with their magnum opus, and they don't. You just have to keep doing your day-to-day creative, and it will be good because it is yours. But I think that people can be putting certainly some of my friends, over pressuring themselves that this is the time that I need to make the best thing I've ever done. And you just need to make the thing that you're doing, I think, is important.
That's brilliant. Well, thanks everyone. I think that was awesome. I think that was just so great. All of you were brilliant. I'd like everyone who's watching to obviously like it or comment or give us your answer to that question that the guys came up with the amazing answers for. Love First Draft. I can just see it. Hilarious. But anyway.
But I'll lose against Dragon's Breath though. We'll just set it on fire.
Well, look out for the proboscis that Nadine's got going. So.
They're all dead to me.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone at home for watching.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, Alex.
See you, Adam. See you, Ben.
See you later.
Guys.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.